Hello everyone. Today I want to start having a little play with some of the things that I bought at the craft fair at Alexandra Palace yesterday. And the first one I want to try is this little set of, looks like geese to me. I don't know if they're ducks or geese, but they look like geese to me. So I'm going to call them geese. So I cut them out of a piece of white. They're all joined together. So fortunately I'm going to keep them like that so that I don't lose any of them. This poor little chap looks like he's got a foot missing, but I don't know what happened to him. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So here are my dies cut out. And, you know, you could use them just white, but you could have a little play with them, and I thought I would. So this is what it started like. I've got a piece of black card here for comparison, so you can perhaps see it a bit more closely. That is what it started out as, just a plain, flat goose. But then I had a play with it, and I added a little bit of dimension. Can you see that? It does look a little bit more interesting. And to get this dimension onto him, I decided to use another one of my purchases from yesterday, which was this embossing folder of Poppies. So I looked at it and I thought somewhere a petal will probably do so that it looks like a wing. So I took my plain, ordinary white die cut and I started to look around and I spotted this petal here. And I thought, you know, that's just about the right size for a wing. And because of some of the creases in the petals that are going this way, it would look like his head was turned. And, you know, I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So that's what I did. So I'll just show you what I did now. I've got to be able to hold it in place, in the place I want it. So into my Platinum 6, and the sandwich for a 3D embossing, well, for an embossing folder is this one. But I found that was too thick. So what I used was regular plate plus a shim. Here's my metal shim. I used my regular plate and a shim, and that seemed to do. So through we go. Right, let's have a look, see how this chap looks now. I think you'll be a bit surprised, as I was. So when I looked at it, I thought, oh my goodness me, it looks like a petal of a flower. Thought, I don't like that at all. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll put it back in the machine with an ordinary sandwich. I'll just flatten it a bit. So popped it back in and flattened it. But that impression is still there. Do you see? You can still see the sweep of that wing. Now, it's not quite there. The edges look a little bit flat to me. So I want to just sort of round them a little bit. So once more, I'm going to use my foam mat. Somebody messaged me in a panic the other day. What could they do? They didn't have they've got an embossing tool, but they didn't have an embossing mat, and doing it on a self-healing mat didn't do any good at all. So I just said, have you got an old mouse mat somewhere? Oh, his legs come off. That's because it was on a bit of embossing. I'll stick that together in a minute. Right, what I did was this. So she used her mouse mat and it worked brilliantly. So I'm going to give a bit of shape now to the neck, down the middle of the neck to make it look rounded. I will stick that foot back on. That was because, as I say, it hit a bit of embossing, I think. And I'm just going to round the edges of this a bit more because I flattened it. When it was cut, first of all, from the die, the edges were nice. You always get a nice edge with the die cut. But because I flattened it, it flattened out that bevel. So there we go. That's the other way up for that foot, isn't it? Okay, we're getting there. So now the next thing I wanted to do was to add a little bit of dimension to him, and I did that with shading. So I've got some pro markers here, and as I always do, go down the left hand side to add a bit of shading, a bit underneath, round the back here underneath. Do you see? He's coming to life already, isn't he? Feather it in. There we go. I did give him an eye, just with a fine liner. There we go. Make it a bit rounder. I didn't want it just dead red. There we go. And then with a slightly deeper shade of grey, I've got a cool grey 3 here, I did the beak. Because I actually wasn't quite sure of the colouring of geese. So I looked online and their feet look grey and their beaks look grey. So I did that. There we go. I can easily stick that back on when we stick it onto the thing. One thing I did do to my one here, I put a bit of this twinkle on it. It's, you know, the gilding polishes that you get. Well, this is it's kind of a cousin of that. It's called Glitter Kiss. And a chap at the fair yesterday, he said, please can I put some on the back of your hand? And you'll be so surprised when you see it. So I was walking around all yesterday with a twinkly hand, and it's just kind of, it's like what do you call it? Glamour dust, or sparkle, very fine glitter, but it's in a suspension of a paste. So in the same way, you can use your sponge to put it over things if you want to. Now, I'm going to reserve judgment on this. I'm not sure if I really actually want to see twinkle on a goose, but we will see. So, having used 2 of my purchases, well, 3 if you count that, the goslings I just coloured with a couple of shades of yellow Copic markers, and with the grey again from Pro Markers, I did their beaks and their feet, and I added a bit of shading on their back, because I looked online to see what they look like, and they don't look as all yellow as hen chicks do, chicken chicks, if you know what I mean. But the goslings look as if they've got some, darker feathers down amongst their plumage. So now I was just going to see how I could put them onto a card, and I thought I would have the mother. Where's my foot? I don't want to lose that foot. I'll stick it back on in a minute. Put it on there. I'd have the mother near the front, and then a whole bunch of little tiddlers bringing up the rear. So there she is. And we can put the little ones. And these little ones, I'm going to put a tiny bit of foam tape on the back, just so that they stand out. And I put a bit of foam tape in the middle of the mum too. So, arrange these like this, and I thought, well, what would they be walking in? Where would they be walking? What would they be doing? And I thought there'd be a bit of grass. So, let's move that to one side for a minute, because they won't take a moment to stick down. I found some tiny stamps from Artist Impression, is it called? AI. And they've got some bits of grass, bits of stones, this kind of stuff. And I thought that would be ideal just to ground these birds. So I've got some peeled paint, Distress Oxide, and some hickory smoke. So I thought I would use the hickory smoke for the pebbles and just do a few little. And it's quite nice to do stamping off, where, you know, you do it once and then do it again. And if you think, I've got a try-out piece here. If you just try it out first and see what you think, if you don't like the first impression, then stamp on a piece of scrap before you go on to do the real thing. I think I'll just use perhaps this one little tuft of grass. Let's just see what they look like. You see, it just gives it a little grounding. Sweet, isn't it? You don't need it to go all the way along, and then I could have a sentiment. Don't know what I would say. Have a think about that one. And there we have another one of my purchases. So now I'll go ahead, if I can find the foot, I'll stick it back on again. And I will make it into a card. You can see the finished article on my Instagram page. We'll have to make a new notice. This one's getting rather messy. Or on my Facebook page. So that's CAS with friends, Christine Ann Stokes. So thank you so much for watching.